Hey guys, welcome back to our Porsche restoration project. In the previous few videos, we just went through the sound deadening and carpet installation process of our project here. Getting a little bit broader perspective today, we had a request from a viewer, Pedro. I was hoping that we could get a little bit broader shots on the car here, just to kind of show what's going on in its entirety, to get a better feel of where we're at with the project. A lot of the detail work we do here is up so close, it's hard to see really what's going on in a bigger picture. So we're trying to accommodate Pedro as we can, working through the project here. So we're looking at the back seating area here, and today in this video what we're going to do, we're going to cover up some of this, these templates here. You can see we've got a foam and cardboard template arrangement mocked up here. These were supplied to me by Autos International. And they are actual templates that are made to fit and replicate the originals that came out of the car. So what we're going to start with here first today was going to be our rear deck, because it's the largest piece, and then we're going to move on to our side pieces here. And then also I've got the Garnish rails already refinished. They're ready to reinstall. We'll take a look at those also. And then while we're at it here, let's just take a quick refresher look at our carpet kit to see how that turned out in its entirety. Give our friend Pedro here a little bit better, broader perspective of our interior of our car. And then coming around to the back here, we can see our rear deck here. I've got marked off here with a Sharpie what's going on in these locations here by our defrosters. There's some flange mounts under there. You can see in red there. We need to cut out our cardboard underneath. We'll show you that here in a second, so it sits down and seats properly. So that's what it's going to look like coming into our side areas here, and also the back. Look at the other side here. Fairly tight to our headliner, but not exactly a fitted piece in there, but also the original was not either. They did build some clearances into these panels, which we'll be able to see exactly how they turned out once we overlay everything. So there's some side clearance going on here. It'll tighten up a little bit as we cover them, but that's pretty much what it looks like before we get started. All right, let's pull this big piece out of here. We'll take that into the shop, lay it side by side with our original, see what the two look like together, and we'll go ahead and get started. So just a quickie look here at these flanges sticking up while we got our deck pulled out of there. So these are our luggage strap anchoring points. Got some hardware that's going to screw down into there once we set our deck down into place. So what's going to happen is our cardboard deck is going to set directly down onto our sound deadening, and those are going to push through right to our upholstery. And we'll screw our hardware right through into that. Okay, so here we are looking at our completely destroyed original. As you can see here, pretty much nothing we can salvage off of this piece here. But we can see how they did put it together. So what they did is they had a cardboard pattern. Looks like they contact cemented some of this mesh type material. Looks like about 1/8 inch, and then just stretched the leatherette material over the top of that. So this was not glued to the foam. It was actually made to stretch as it bends that shape there. And you can see on our new replacement piece here, what they're doing is they're mounting the foam. Looks like about 1/8 inch foam with a web backing on their template there, and that's going to make for a real nice shape. And then looking at the back side here, you can see it fared just a little bit better than the front side, but still it's just too far gone, too much buckling in there, just really warped. So even if it wasn't broken, no way I could reuse anything on there. So really it's just better to get a new replacement panel. The nice thing about this one here, Autos International had set this up with the hold down tabs there. They got those located in the right spot. They got all these holes cut out for you, so it just drops right down into place. The only adjustment I had to make was just right here on the luggage strap, hold down there. And they also mount the foam for you on the front side. So really all we got to do is just wrap that with our leatherette, and we're good to go. So before we start covering, we would want to just make sure we do a mock-up to see if she fits in the car properly. And then also it's always good to check and see if the new replacement panel is going to be the same shape and contour size as the original. In the case of this one, yeah, they're right on the money. Beautiful job there by Autos International. And then one last thing here we want to look at before we get started on our rear deck upholstery work. So these are our rear seating garnishing rails. I've already gone ahead and reconditioned and reupholstered these pieces just to kind of speed things up and move things along a little bit faster. You can see here our original leatherette material definitely needs replacing. And then also, because these are a metal rail, they're contact cemented on there, and you'll have a little bit of sweating going on between the contact cement and the backing side of our leatherette. So when you restore these pieces, you'll probably be dealing with a little bit of pitting on those, which will have to be resolved before you cover them. But I'm going to do a video on this kind of work a little bit down the road. Probably will cover this when I do the dashboard upper and lower sections. Okay, so moving on to the fun stuff here. So what we want to do before we get started, we want to make sure that we have an area that we can work off of that's going to be really flat and clean, that we can work comfortably. Also, something to keep in mind when you're doing upholstery work, whether it's a small piece or even a large piece, you want to kind of think of it like doing a paint work. So it's a finished material. If you get any kind of dust or grit or anything caught between the finished material and the board you're sticking to, or the foam you're sticking to, or even the, in the case of the garnishing rails of metal, if there's something in there, it will definitely push its way through to the top and you'll see it in the finished product. So got to be really, really clean in your prep work. And then finalizing any prep work on our board here before we start wrapping it, I've gone ahead and cut out that little bit of area around our flanges, and also took this piece back out to the car and did one more fit in there just to make sure it would work. And then also in front of these flange cutouts here, you're going to have a radiused area that we're going to have to roll over. So one thing you want to do before we start covering is just kind of pre-bend, massage, roll this guy, knead it with your thumbs, and just kind of work it really good before we cover it. That'll definitely help out with that radius. Otherwise, if it's too sharp of a bend, you could get a shape popping through there on our finished work. So I'm running about 1.5 to 2 inch border around this thing is all we really need to glue this down. So let me go ahead and finish cutting this out, and then we'll take a look at it. And just applying everything by finger. Run about a 2 inch band all the way around. And then contacting this piece all the way around. So we have one edge locked down. This is going to be our straight edge. We'll work from here, and we want to make sure we don't stick down any of our corner points at this point. So we're going to go ahead and flip this over and then start stretching her out. So lighting in here is not so good, but you can see here where the glare's coming across it. So I'm going to start in the center, and I'm going to pull. You can see how it stretches out there. I want to make sure that we're stretched out. So we're looking down the center line here, not overstretching because it's still going to pull tight once we put that bend back in there. So right now I'm just tacking it right there so we don't have any lines or any kind of waves in there in the center. And then we're going to work our way down. Okay, so both outsides are fairly where they need to be. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull an X from this corner to this corner, starting here, just so everything looks stretched out, and just tacking right about there. And then we're going to pull the other corner. And then next we'll have to do this inside radius here. So we want to put enough relief cuts in there where we can make the bend and the shape, but we want to stay back far enough that we don't have any cutting going on the front surface here. Let's stay back about a ½ inch. And then tying off our corners here. These are really the most difficult. So what we want to do is do some relief cuts. Pull as tight as we can. This way. That way, and then use this tab to pull and work this corner. Okay, so there she is. Let's just go ahead and take a look at our border here. That'll be really helpful for you when you get to pulling and stretching. This is pretty much what your corners and perimeters are going to look like. As long as you're pulled over that edge there, you're not going to see anything on the back side. And with this glue, there's no way any of this ever coming up. Some guys like to use Upholstery Tacker. I like to use it in some cases, but I think for something that's as shallow as 1/8 inch, I just don't see that there's much benefit in the holding power as opposed to this glue. Okay, so we'll bounce some light across it so you can see everything's stretched out nice and tight. No lines in it, no wrinkles, and our borders look real tight. Alright, let's set this up on a tripod. I'm going to put a bend in it and then we can see it pull even tighter. Alright, let's take it outside, put her on. Alright, so setting her back in place here, looking good from the back side. And then from this side, we're locked down into our male-female flanges up front. There's 3 of those. And then we got our 4 garnish rail tabs sticking through there. So what we want to do, we just want to make sure we're leaved out here enough area around these flanges that we're not bunching up material here. If we bunch up material in the front here, what's going to happen when we set our garnish rail on there, we're going to end up with a protrusion in front of our panel here. And then our garnish rail just sitting in place there. You can see how that's all going to work out. Alright, so we got through our back deck section there successfully. Let's go ahead and move on to our side upholstery here. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to take this left side here, I've got it stripped down and set up on the bench. I'm going to roll through this, figure out the best way to stick it down and how to install it. Once I get that all sorted out, then we'll come out here, take on the right side and go through it step by step. Okay, so we got this side put into place now. About 4 hours to get through this. Just take a look from the back side here and see how that finishes out with everything. Also, while I'm putting all that together, I have a little video drama here. I seem to have misplaced my earbuds and microphone, so please bear with me until I find those again and we get back on some proper microphone. But you can see here these tabs popping through. This is what we want, a little free space around those tabs, so when we cinch down our garnishing rail, we don't have any kind of binding or any kind of hindrance there. And then looking from the inside, and then moving on to this side, so there's 2 things we want to mock up before we get started. First thing we're going to need to mock up is going to be our wheel well plastic piece here. And what I've done here to conform this shape, this has got kind of a little bit of a bend in it. I've warmed it up with a heat gun and bent it around this shape right here, just to make sure we get the right angle. Out of the box, it's just straight and can end up with some problems right here. So heat gun on the back side helps bend that. And then right here at our garnishing rail, this is where we're going to put our seam right here. And we'll fold that over and stick that down right on that line. So we got our post put in place here. Also using a plastic tool, just kind of press things in and then wrapping around. And then using our tool to press the back side and trimming that out. And then we'll need a sliver of material that we're going to place underneath our garnishing rail. And then that's also going to tuck underneath our chrome windowsill. Okay, so I think we're good with this piece. Let's go ahead and take it into the shop and get her wrapped. Okay, starting with our straightest line first. A couple of relief cuts in there. And the whole trick with this, again, is just tacking and getting the right amount of relief cuts in there. And then even though we're tacked, we can see when we pull over that edge there, get a nice line on there, nice straight line. Okay, now we got everything marked off. So what we're going to do, we're going to glue slightly over this line here, but on our backing piece, we're going to come right down to the edge, right at this line here. We don't want to get any glue on our foam at all. So that glue needs to stop at or before that edge. We're going to go ahead and pull from this direction right here, this first crease. We're going to pull in this direction and stick. Just tacking. And then next I'm going to use an upholstery tacker. I'm using 3/8 crown by 1/2 inch in length. And what we're going to do is we're going to stitch this corner, and that'll give us a nice 90-degree edge inside there. Inside corners are real difficult to get unless you have something like a staple to keep it shape. You can see there we're a little bit out of shape there. See that there? That'll clean right up with our stapler. And then once we've gone ahead and stapled everything off and it looks good, we can go ahead and snip the back side of our staples and buzz them off flush with a die grinder. You could just bend them over, or in case of what I'm doing, I'm actually going to be gluing to our dyno liner, so I want everything flush. And here we are, all trimmed up and ground flush. Okay, next let's go ahead and take this outside. We need to do one final mock-up before we finish the other piece and stick it to it. But first I'm going to run out and see if I can't run down some earbuds and a proper working microphone. Okay guys, so we're back in business. I got a new working microphone here. So what we're checking for here on this piece, we're just basically checking that it's going to sit tight to the bottom. Looks good with our upholstery. And then we're marking off this back edge here with a Sharpie for a reference line, as we're going to put a little bit of super adhesive behind there when we do our final install. And then our piece that's going to overlay it, we just need to notch out our foam for our garnish rail tabs there and our front seam. And then also we want to check and make sure that our cardboard underneath it, we're going to have a matching profile to the piece that's already upholstered. If not, you may have to do a little trimming there just to make sure everything's going to seat down nice and tight. And then the front edge here, what we need to do is we just kind of need to pre-bend this front area right in here. A little bit of a radius, as it's going to kind of make this turn here. A little bit of a radius in there. Just take that area, loosen it up a little bit, massage it, and get it to relax before we put it in there. If you don't do that, then when we install it, you're going to have a hard line right down here, real sharp line. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the quickie version on this one here, as you kind of get the idea of the stretching and pulling and sticking. Just going to go ahead and pre-put this one together. We'll take a look at it and see what it should look like before it's assembled. And then some of this needs to remain loose before we put it on the car. We'll actually do the relief cuts out there and the final stick down in place on the car. Okay, so we got that piece all finished up about as far as we can take it. Let's go ahead and compare the original profile and set up to the one we're going to do here. So look about the same shape there. And then flipping it over, you can see where it tucks back in there next to the rear garnish rail. And then our leading edge there, we're just going to kind of leave long there, and then we're going to trim and glue it in place. And then the top edge here, just a straight run with leaving just a little bit of loose area up here in the front where we can trim and stick it as needed. And then the edge here, this piece is going to stick down to our wheel well lip. We're going to glue this and the lip on the wheel well. And then that should be our look before we glue it down. And then comparing it with our original. I'll try and tuck in this area right here. Get that in there as tight as we can get it. And then one last dry run here just to make sure our two profiles match each other. The thing we're checking for here is that we don't have any staples showing through. And then aligning it like the original. Looks like we want to be hanging off the back there about a 1/4 inch, just like the original here, hanging off the rear. Alright, let's glue them up and stick them together. Okay, so we got a nice heavy coat of glue on both surfaces, and the trick here is to make sure our glue is 100% dry before we make our attempt to stick it together. Okay, so our technique to set this on here without screwing it up, so what we want to do, we want to be about a 1/4 inch hanging off the rear here. I'm going to set down on the non-glued surface and move this direction. All I'm going to do here is set down and tack. I'm going to come over to here, right about this crown right here, set and tack, and then this valley down in here, I'm just going to set and tack. I'm not going to press anything out until it all looks good. Once it all looks good, then I'll go ahead and press everything in for 100% contact. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that looks like everything worked out all right for us. Let's take it outside, put it on the car one last time for a fit. If everything looks good, we'll go ahead and glue her down. So it looks like everything's going to work out okay here. I've gone ahead and made our relief cuts for our speed nuts here. This is going to fit our garnish rail a little bit better, not having any build up there, and also in the rear here. And then this area up front here, what we're going to do, we're going to fold that over the focus here, and then we're going to tuck it in just like that. So garnish rail is in place and snug down there. Also we have our front seam here folded over, and we get at the focus here. Just tacked for now. There is some lateral adjustment in this rail with those speed nuts. You can move it front to rear to some degree to really draw it up nice and tight there. Looks nice and clean. And then at the bottom here, everything looks like it's going to work out okay. So all we really have to do now is we just need to pull it over our door jamb here and glue the back side. So on this edge here, what we're going to do, the foam is going to sit down right to the edge here like so, and our material is actually going to wrap around it and glue. So we have foam here but not foam on the back side. Let me go ahead and set the camera down. I need to kind of wrestle with this one. It's a little bit tricky. I don't want to make a mistake here, so let me get it sorted out, then we'll take a look at it. Alright, let's take a look at it here and see how we did. So really the whole trick with this one is just softening up that cardboard that makes that bend there. so we can make a nice smooth radius transition around that corner. And then from this side, we're just glued on to the back side of our weather stripping lip here. Once we like everything, then we can go ahead and trim that out of there with a utility knife blade. And then a close-up look here at our floor transition. So what's happening here, this is the exact width of the detail that was left on the original that came out of there. I suppose you could come out to here, but I'm just replicating the way it was on my car. And that just clamps down on there with some screws, holds it in place, and that's how that finishes off. And then before we close up today, let's go ahead and take a close-up look at a couple of important details. So the first one here we want to look at is going to be the sliver of material we put underneath the garnish rail. You can see it tucked down in there, wraps up underneath the chrome windowsill here, and then tucks underneath the garnish rail. The reason we put that sliver in there is because those garnish rails don't quite seat up against the chrome sill there, so you'll need something in there. If you see down in there when the window's open or look through the glass, you'll see paint. So a little material in there helps smooth out that transition. And then the next detail we want to look at here is you see that space behind this area here. So what's going to happen when I pull that back deck out of there, we'll have to pull that out of there one more time, maybe two more times before we're completely finished with it. I'll have it out of there to install the back window. That'll make that installation of the window a little bit easier. Also, we have to pull it out of there to put our seat backs in. Once our seat backs are fully installed, then we can install it for the final time. But once we pull it out of there, I'm going to go ahead and put some material behind there, just like our garnish rails to windowsill. Cover that up. That way you don't see anything on those two sides. And then the other thing worth noting here is all the materials we're using here are new replacement leatherette and all our foams and cardboards. All these materials are a little bit thicker than the originals that came out of there. So with the exception of our back deck here and the built-in side clearances, and the reason they built those clearances in there so it can be removed after the sides are installed. Even with the exception of that, everything is extremely tight with the new thicker materials. You can take a look at this garnish rail here. Look how tight that is, garnish rail to garnish rail, and we are fully cinched down here on the left with that screw. And also over here on the right hand side, you know, it's so tight you can't even get a piece of paper in there. So all you can do is press that in there with everything finished up. And I have seen in some restorations where guys have used some padding underneath these garnish rails and then covered them. Really, they should just be wrapped with a leatherette, no padding under there. It looks better, and you won't have any problems with clearances. So yeah, quite a bit of work in this whole back section to install and fit together properly. I'm going to say degree of difficulty, the centerpiece not too bad, garnishing rails not too bad. But those side pieces, yeah, I would score those like an 8 out of a possible 10 for degree of difficulty. So when in doubt, definitely call a professional. So speaking of professionals, I'd like to give out a really big thanks to our friends over at Autos International for making all this possible. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.